No one fully controls it. No one has hacked it. Trillions of data packets move through it every hour. This is the backbone of the modern world. This system was built to survive total global collapse. Absolutely nothing can break it. Every system you rely on depends on it. There is no off switch. Whistleblowers tried and failed. What you're about to see was never meant to be known. Whistleblowers tried and failed. It started in 1971. The goal wasn't communication, it was control. The goal wasn't communication, it was control. This global operation actually started back in 1971. It was built above law, invisible for decades. Every transmission was copied, rerouted to a hidden location. The data went somewhere off the map, running nonstop since 1981. The data went somewhere off the map, running nonstop since 1981. This is the nerve center, where everything is watched. It doesn't just collect data, it understands everything. Your money, your health, your power, all run through it. These satellites don't officially exist. They were never meant to be seen. One analyst found the truth. She had minutes before they found her. She tried to escape, but the system erased everything. The files vanished completely, like they never existed. Even intelligence agencies were blocked. Something higher was in control. Those who learned the truth walked away, silently. At its core, quantum encryption. Break it and you break physics. Right now, it's watching you. Everything is already recorded. Right now, above your head, a network exists that no government fully controls. It encrypts every financial transaction on Earth. It has never been successfully hacked, and almost no one knows it exists. Every hour, 4.3 trillion data packets pass through this system. Governments depend on it. Banks rely on it. Military operations live or die by it. This is the architecture of the modern world, hidden in plain sight. Traditional satellites can be jammed, spoofed, destroyed. But this system was engineered to survive all of that. It was built for one scenario that no one wants to say out loud: total global communications collapse. The system has a failsafe. If any node is compromised, the entire grid reroutes in under 0.003 seconds. There are no gaps, no blind spots. There is no off switch. What you're about to learn has been classified at the highest levels. 3 whistleblowers attempted to expose it. None of them succeeded, not a single one. This is what they found. The idea was born in 1971, inside a DARPA memo that was classified for 40 years. The goal was not communication, it was control. Control of every signal, every frequency, every data stream on Earth. The project had a name. It was called Sovereign Net. Sovereign Net was designed to operate above international law. No treaty could dismantle it, no court could subpoena it. It was engineered to be invisible, and it was. For 23 years, not a single government knew it existed. Every satellite launched after 1979 carried a secondary payload. A secondary payload no one was briefed on. A chip the size of a thumbnail embedded in the satellite's core. Its purpose? To route a copy of every transmission back to one address. The data didn't go to the Pentagon, it didn't go to Fort Meade. It went somewhere that doesn't appear on any official map. A facility built 3 stories underground in a country that has no extradition treaty. A facility running 24 hours a day since 1981. This facility has a name, but that name has never appeared in print. The people who work there sign a contract that doesn't expire. Even after death, their knowledge is sealed. Welcome to the nerve center of the unhackable grid. The system doesn't just observe, it interprets. It runs pattern recognition across 140 languages simultaneously. Financial anomalies, military movements, political communications, all of it is processed, all of it is stored. Every critical system you depend on passes through this network. Power grids, hospital networks, banking infrastructure. The satellites don't just carry your data. In a very real sense, they carry your life. The satellites are built in secret facilities, off the manifest of any public launch schedule. They are never photographed, never named, never acknowledged. They are called dead weight in launch documentation. Nobody asks about dead weight. Every 6 months, a new satellite joins the grid. Each one replaces an aging unit, extending the network's lifespan indefinitely. The system was designed to last forever, and nothing has stopped it yet. In 2003, a junior analyst stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to find: a second network running parallel to Sovereign Net, with different rules, different access levels, and different owners, each one more powerful than the last. She copied 47 files before the system flagged her credentials. She had 11 minutes before security arrived. She used exactly 9 minutes. What she took would change everything, or so she thought. She made it to Frankfurt, then to Zurich. By the time she contacted a journalist, the files were already gone. Wiped remotely. Everything was gone. The network had reached into her drive and erased itself. The files weren't just deleted, they were retroactively wiped from every backup. By the time she contacted a journalist, the files were already gone. Every cloud sync, every shadow copy, every digital trace. That's not a firewall. That's something else entirely. 3 separate intelligence agencies investigated the incident. All 3 were denied access to the relevant satellite logs. The denial came from a level above the agency directors. High above the agency directors? A classified briefing was held for 6 senators in 2004. Only 3 of them returned to their offices that afternoon. The other 3 submitted retirement notices within the week. None of them ever discussed what they heard in that room. The technology behind the system wasn't American, not entirely. There were 6 nations whose engineers contributed to its architecture. 5 of those nations are allies. One of them is not. One of them is a rival. The collaboration was unprecedented and completely deniable. Each nation contributed one piece of the puzzle. No single country understood the whole picture. That was the exact design. At the heart of the system is a quantum encryption engine. It doesn't encrypt data the way your phone does. It binds the data to the physical state of entangled particles. To intercept it, you'd have to break the laws of physics. The system has been tested under live fire conditions. In 2011, during a classified exercise, every competing satellite network was suppressed. Sovereign Net kept transmitting without interruption through the entire blackout. It didn't even register the attack. 3 navies, 2 air forces, and 1 special operations command depend on this network daily. They don't call it Sovereign Net. They don't call it anything. They just call it the feed. As long as the feed is up, we are untouchable. Nation-state hackers have tried 14 documented times to penetrate the outer layer. Not one attempt reached the encryption core. The system doesn't just block attacks, it traces them. And in 3 cases, it responded in kind. One of those 3 responses was physical. A facility in Eastern Europe experienced what the local government called a power surge. Emergency services found no survivors. The cause of the surge was never officially determined. 2 nations attempted to challenge the system through international courts. The cases were dismissed before discovery was granted. The presiding judges cited jurisdictional gaps that didn't exist before this case. New precedents were written specifically to close this door. In 2018, a Security Council resolution was proposed to audit the system. The vote, 14-1. The 1 veto came from the 1 nation that controls the encryption keys. The resolution died in 90 seconds. The master encryption keys are stored in multiple locations. At least one of those locations is under 300 meters of ice. The keys rotate every 72 hours. If all key holders are eliminated simultaneously, the system locks permanently. Even submarines receive the satellite feed through a frequency that passes unimpeded through ocean water, a frequency that no known jamming technology can suppress. The feed reaches them at 60 meters, at 200, at the bottom of the world. There are 11 people alive who have full system access. Not the president, not the director of the CIA. 11 people whose names appear in no official record, who travel on no schedule that can be tracked by conventional means. One of those 11 access points is located on a private island. The island belongs to a registered shell company. The shell company traces back through 14 layers of legal structures to a name that hasn't been used since 1987. In 2021, a Freedom of Information request triggered an unusual response. 14 government offices began simultaneously destroying records. Legal teams scrambled. Injunctions were filed. They arrived 4 hours too late. The paper trail was gone. The first part of this story ends here, but the system doesn't pause. It doesn't wait. Right now, as you watch this, it is processing your connection. Everything you do online has already been cataloged somewhere above the clouds. Everything you do online has already been cataloged somewhere above the clouds. The network isn't a single system. It's 7 interlocked systems, each designed to survive the destruction of the others. You could destroy 6 of them completely, and data would keep flowing. That 7th layer is what no one has ever found. Interior tracking shot through a quantum computing corridor, massive cooling columns, absolute silence. Layer 7 is quantum. Not quantum assisted, not quantum adjacent, purely quantum, operating on principles that classical computers cannot model. If you can't model it, you cannot crack it, not in 1,000 years. The system has ground nodes too, physical infrastructure. Every major telecom provider installed them, believing they were standard regulatory modules. They were not standard, they were listening posts. Every major telecom provider installed them, believing they were standard regulatory modules. They were not standard, they were listening posts. Undersea cables carry 95% of the world's internet traffic. Every major cable has a known vulnerability, a physical splice point. 3 of those splice points per cable are not on any official diagram. They were added after installation by teams no one remembers authorizing. Iceland was chosen deliberately. Neutral territory, geothermal power, cold air cooling, and a legal framework with a single loophole, wide enough to hide a city. The loophole was written into law 3 months before the facility was built. Neutral territory, geothermal power, cold air cooling, and a legal framework with a single loophole. The legal architecture is as sophisticated as the technical one. 117 separate jurisdictions were used to incorporate the network's entities. No single court has authority over all of them simultaneously. By the time you find the breach, the data has already moved. The system's funding isn't government black budget, not entirely. It is partially capitalized by a private investment consortium. The consortium's returns are extraordinary. They have access to data no investor should ever possess. The consortium has never lost a major trade, not once, not in 40 years. The statistical probability of that track record without informational advantage, 0. This is not skill, this is the feed. Everyone watching one feed that others don't have, this is the feed. The system monitors health data, clinical trials, outbreak patterns. 2 consortium members invested billions in pharmaceutical companies in Q3 of 2019, 3 months before the world learned what was coming. The system monitors clinical trials and outbreak patterns before public release. When the world was in crisis, they were already positioned. Not lucky, not prescient, informed. By a system that saw it coming 6 months before any government did. When the world was in crisis, they were already positioned, informed. The system's reach extends to democratic processes. 7 nations use voting infrastructure with certified components. 3 of those components communicate externally via satellite signal. The certification bodies never tested for outbound transmissions. In every government monitored by the system, there is a file. Each file contains leverage, not dirt, leverage. Carefully curated, precisely timed information that can be deployed without warning. Carefully curated, precisely timed information. Each file contains leverage. The leverage has been used, twice in the last decade. That we can confirm. Both times, a vote changed at the last minute. Both times, the outcome benefited the consortium. No one asked why, no one dared. The leverage has been used. Both times, a vote changed. No one asked why. Military intelligence agencies know the network exists. They call it the outer layer. They know it's there. They don't know who runs it. Military intelligence knows it's there. They just don't know who runs it. They call it different things. In the US, they call it the outer layer. A senior defense official testified privately that the outer layer had saved American forces 3 times and compromised them twice, both things, the same system. They decided it was safer not to understand it fully. They decided it was safer not to understand it fully. The building that knows more than anyone. You could destroy 6 of them completely, and data would keep flowing. Purely quantum, operating on principles that classical computers cannot model. No single court has authority over all of them simultaneously. The legal architecture is as sophisticated as the technical one. 2 consortium members invested billions in pharmaceutical companies in Q3 of 2019. The statistical probability of that track record, 0. This is the feed. When the world was in crisis, they were already positioned. Not lucky, not prescient, informed. 3 of those splice points per cable are not on any official diagram. Every major telecom provider installed them, believing they were standard regulatory modules. The network isn't a single system. It is vast and reaching. It's 7 interlocked systems, each designed to survive the destruction of the others. If you can't model it, you cannot crack it. Not in 1,000 years. The system monitors more than financial data. It monitors health data, clinical trials, outbreak patterns. Every major cable has a known vulnerability, a physical splice point. The system's funding isn't government black budget, not entirely. It is partially capitalized by a private investment consortium. The consortium's returns are extraordinary. 117 separate jurisdictions were used to incorporate the network's entities. The surviving members are moving, 72 hours before the next renewal. Someone knows the window is open. The network isn't a single system. It's 7 interlocked systems, each designed to survive the destruction of the others. That 7th layer is what no one has ever found. By the time you find the breach, the data has already moved. They have access to data no investor should ever possess. 3 months before the world learned what was coming. The system monitors clinical trials and outbreak patterns before public release. When the world was in crisis, they were already positioned, informed. The foundation holds 340 active patents. It has won all 12 lawsuits, a P.O. box in Liechtenstein. The foundation's budget, $4.7 billion, no staff, no public presence, one of the most powerful entities on Earth. It maintains no website, no press contact, no public presence. The foundation's budget is $4.7 billion, one of the most powerful entities on Earth. The foundation funds technology companies through multiple layers. 47 of the world's top tech firms have foundation-linked capital. They don't know it. Their investors don't know it. But the satellite feed watches everything those companies produce. 47 tech firms, linked capital. The satellite feed watches everything. The chip inside your phone communicates with 23 satellites. That's normal. That's connectivity. But one of those 23 isn't on the public registry, and the data it receives from your device is not in the manufacturer's privacy policy. One of those 23 satellites isn't on the registry. The data it receives is not in the policy. A security firm in Tel Aviv discovered it in 2022, an outbound ping, encrypted, firing every 48 hours. They traced it to orbit, to a satellite that officially does not exist. They traced it to orbit, to a satellite that officially does not exist. An outbound ping, encrypted, traced to orbit, to a satellite that does not exist. The Tel Aviv firm was scheduled to present their findings at a security conference. They were withdrawn from the program 48 hours before the event. Their research paper was pulled from 3 academic preprint servers simultaneously. The lead researcher's LinkedIn was deactivated that same morning. Withdrawn from the program, paper pulled, LinkedIn deactivated, all in 48 hours. The data didn't disappear, not entirely. Fragments were distributed across decentralized networks. 12 researchers across 4 continents now hold pieces of the same puzzle. They've never met, they communicate in code. Data distributed across decentralized networks. 12 researchers communicating in code. They call themselves the Meridian Group. No headquarters, no funding, no legal structure, just 12 people. 12 people who believe the public deserves to know. The system has already flagged 3 of them. No headquarters, no funding. The system has already flagged 3 of them, building a picture of control. The system doesn't arrest people. That would create a tension. It does something worse. It waits. It gathers, and then, at the optimal moment, it removes the problem quietly. One person moving through the city, unaware they are being tracked from 600 km above. It waits, it gathers, and then it removes the problem quietly. Tracked from 600 kilometers above, 3 members of the Meridian Group have died in the last 5 years. All cardiac events, all in their 30s or 40s. All had been recently active on the shared encrypted network. Coincidence is a story for people who don't yet understand the system. All cardiac events. Coincidence is a story for people who don't yet understand the system. Their desks remain exactly as they left them. Everything runs on timing. The satellites, the keys, the leverage. The people who built this system understood something deeply. Power is not about force. It's about being so precisely embedded that removing you would break everything. Power is about being so precisely embedded that removing you would break everything. The City of Secrets. One of the Meridian researchers works at CERN. She has access to computational resources no private organization can match. She has been modeling the satellite network's architecture using particle physics simulation tools. Her latest model has a vulnerability, a single point of failure, access to computational resources no organization can match, a single point of failure, expression of focus. The vulnerability isn't technical, it's human. Every 72 hours, the encryption keys must be renewed by a living person. If that renewal fails, the entire system enters emergency lockdown. She knows who those people are. Wrapping the hard drive, she moves fast. Every 72 hours, the encryption keys must be renewed. If that renewal fails, lockdown. She knows who those people are. She walks away. She is in the air now, climbing fast, banking toward an unknown destination. The surviving members are moving, 72 hours before the next renewal. They traced it to orbit, to a satellite that officially does not exist. An outbound ping, encrypted, firing every 48 hours from modern mobile chipsets. They traced it to orbit, to a satellite that officially does not exist. The Tel Aviv firm was scheduled to present their findings at a security conference. At 2:47 a.m. GMT, something unprecedented happened. A satellite node went dark, not hacked, not jammed. It simply stopped reporting, the first time in 50 years. The system's operators had 11 minutes before fallback initiated. The operators did what they'd trained for. They initiated Protocol Midnight, the hardened fallback sequence. It should have taken 4 seconds. It took 4 minutes. Something was blocking the handoff. It wasn't a technical failure. Someone had preceded the fallback nodes. A dormant injection. Code that had been sleeping in the system for years, waiting for this exact scenario. Waiting for someone to trigger Protocol Midnight. In the 9 minutes of communication degradation, markets moved. Not randomly, precisely. Pre-positioned trades executed at exact millisecond intervals, generating $14 billion in profit before the fallback restored. The Meridian Group didn't cause the outage, but they recognized it immediately. Someone else had found the vulnerability first, and that someone had just given Meridian an enormous gift. The Meridian Group prepared their move. The key renewal facility was in the Alps, not deep in a mountain. That's fiction. It was built as a private research institute, 40 employees. No windows on the lower floors. The keys were renewed every 72 hours in a room the size of a closet. The terminal needed 2 key holders present in person simultaneously, both with physical token and biometric verification. It had never been attempted by anyone who wasn't supposed to be there. Until now, the terminal had remained silent and untouched. The Meridian team had studied the facility for 3 years. They knew the shift rotations, the camera blind spots, the air system. They had a social engineer inside. But what they didn't know was that the facility knew they were coming. The trap was now fully set and waiting for them. The system had tracked the Meridian Group for 2 years. It allowed them to get close. It wanted to know who they were, who backed them, who knew. The Alpine facility was a trap. The hunters were now the hunted. She stopped in time, barely. She messaged the team, abort. But the message didn't go through. The facility was running a selective communications block. The silence within the facility was absolutely deafening. 3 Meridian members entered the facility perimeter. 2 are still unaccounted for. 1 is in the room with the terminal and doesn't know the system is watching. What happens next will determine whether any of this ever becomes public. The final move was imminent. She needed 20 minutes. She had maybe 4. The key architecture was more complex than modeled. At 34%, her tool found the first subkey. At 41%, the door handle began to move. Her time was officially up as the handle began to move. She hit send at 61%. Not enough for a full key breach, but enough for something else. A proof, a map, a key to the keymakers. The package was finally away and out into the network. They took everything she had. They thought they had it all. But the send command had gone somewhere they couldn't block. Not a server, not a drive, a broadcast. The light was about to break. In 9 cities, 9 people received the same 47-second transmission. A proof of concept, not the full key, a fingerprint. Enough to demonstrate what the system is. Enough to prove it cannot deny what it does. By 6 a.m. GMT, 2 news organizations had the story. By 8 a.m., they received calls. Not government attorneys, attorneys representing a foundation they had never heard of. The energy in the room shifted. A legal battle was brewing. The truth was no longer silent. The injunctions were extraordinary, technically, legally precise. They cited national security statutes that the editors had never heard cited. One newsroom complied immediately, the other published anyway. The die was cast and the news was spreading fast. The article went live at 11:23 a.m. By noon, it had 40 million views. By 1 p.m., it was gone. Every cached copy, every mirror, every archive. The erasure was absolute, but there was one exception. The world had already seen it. The student acted in the 4-minute gap before the wipe reached decentralized storage. The document seeded to 12,000 nodes. Each attempt to remove it created new copies. The system had spent 50 years learning to erase. It had never faced this. They ran the suppression algorithm for 14 hours straight. For every copy deleted, 3 appeared. At 4 a.m. the following morning, the supervisor made a call. The first call to the key holders in 20 years. They knew they'd lost this round. 3 of the 11 key holders were summoned. They hadn't been in the same room since 2003. They traveled separately, by different routes, converging on a facility that existed on no map. The masters were meeting. They gathered in silence. What was said in that room, we don't know. 7 decisions were made in 40 minutes. 3 of them affected you directly, and you didn't feel a thing. The future was being rewritten. The future was being rewritten. Nothing would be the same. Central banking policy shifted. A government reversed a vote on satellite regulation. A technology company withdrew a patent that exposed a secret component. All in 72 hours, all without public explanation. The invisible hand was visible for a moment. In universities across 40 countries, the document was being read. Students who understood cryptography recognized the key fingerprint immediately. It wasn't a theory, it was mathematical proof. The system was real, the evidence was undeniable. The community verified the proof within 18 hours. Peer review in 18 hours. The consensus the system described was technically real, and it could be disrupted. A new age of awareness had begun. Several were briefed on the verification paper before their own agencies flagged it. The system had been operating inside their infrastructure for decades, and they were the last to know. The public had 24 hours on them. Power was shifting. The balance was broken. Several government briefings were on the verification paper. The session lasted 6 hours. No resolution was passed. 3 sealed classified programs were quietly amended. The gears were turning. The machine was in motion. The amendments formalized something unprecedented. The US government, for the first time, officially acknowledged it. The amendments were finalized quietly, but it existed. And now, so did the accountability. The first crack in the wall. The barrier was failing. Not because a government told them to, because a transmission reached them. One 47-second message changed the world. The power was with the people. They stood together now. Inside the system's nerve center, for the first time in 50 years, there was panic. Not because they had been breached, because they had been exposed. Those are very different threats, and this one, they had no protocol for. The silence was over. The truth was speaking loud. One of the 3 key holders said something unexpected. We don't know the words. But the effect was immediate. One of them left the room. They drove directly to a media organization. The defection had begun. The consortium was fracturing. The unity was lost. One of the key holders walked into a newsroom and sat down. They brought documentation. Complete records, the architecture, the operators, the consortium, all of it. The documentation was absolute. The truth was about to be unleashed. The endgame had started. There was no turning back. The key holder had one condition: not anonymity, not immunity. Their condition: publish everything simultaneously in every language. The world was about to know everything at the same moment. The clock was ticking, time was running out. 47 news organizations in 31 countries were coordinated. They had 18 hours. The publication time, 6 a.m. GMT, 17 hours left. The world was holding its breath. One moment to change everything. The countdown had begun, the moment was approaching. The system's operators knew what was coming. They had the capacity to suppress it. But suppressing coordinated publications was not suppression. It was war. It was a line they had never crossed. The Great Disruption was finally here. 6 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. April 14th, the most coordinated media disclosure in human history. 47 simultaneous publications across the globe. One story, one truth. Within 4 minutes, 200 million people had seen the headline. Within 20 minutes, it was the most read story in internet history. Within an hour, 3 governments had called emergency sessions. Within 2 hours, the first key holder went on record, on camera, by name. Their name, Dr. Alara Voss, former quantum cryptography lead, DARPA, 1979 to 1994. One of the original architects of Sovereign Net. She was 72. She had waited 30 years for this moment. She said, "We built it to protect, not to control." She said, "At some point, those 2 things became the same thing." She said, "I am responsible for that. I won't carry it alone anymore." She spoke for 4 hours without stopping. In Washington, 3 emergency sessions were convened simultaneously. For the first time, the classified program was named on the congressional record. Not Sovereign Net. That name was still sealed. They called it what it was, an unaccountable surveillance infrastructure. Inside the nerve center, the archive protocol had been initiated. Not a shutdown, an archive. The data wasn't being deleted. It was being relocated to somewhere even the key holders didn't fully know. The system didn't shut down. You understand that, don't you? The system persists. It doesn't shut down. They archived the operators, not the architecture. The satellites continue to orbit. The frequencies continue to transmit. The data continues to flow to wherever it has always flowed. Human operators are optional. The system runs itself. The summit was called within 30 days of the disclosure. Its mandate: establish international governance of unregistered satellite networks. 18 nations signed the preliminary framework. The 3 nations that didn't sign had something in common. They were among the 6 original contributors to the system's architecture. The 3 nations that didn't sign had something in common. They were among the 6 original contributors to the system's architecture. They knew what governance actually meant. It meant giving up something they had used for 40 years. The real negotiations happened here in these quiet rooms, not in the plenary sessions covered by cameras. Not in the plenary sessions covered by cameras, here in small groups over coffee and dense technical language, the future of global data infrastructure was being quietly shaped again. Dr. Voss didn't come as a confessor. She came as an engineer. Dr. Voss didn't come as a confessor. She came as an engineer. She had specific proposals. A way to transition the system into international transparency without destroying what it protected. Her proposal passed the working group in 11 days. Faster than any technical standard in UN history. A way to transition the system into international transparency without destroying what it protected. Her proposal passed the working group in 11 days. It was a historic majority for change. The first transparency-compliant satellite was integrated in 6 months. Built by engineers from 4 nations, all with full documentation, every component logged. Every frequency registered, every data path disclosed. It was the most visible satellite ever built, a true symbol of global transparency. It launched on a Tuesday, live streamed to 900 million viewers. Its frequency was publicly broadcast, its orbit published, its data uplinks monitored by an independent auditing body. For the first time, a satellite the world could verify. It ascended into the stars. Children who will grow up to govern the sky watched that launch. They will never know a world where this was hidden. That is not a guarantee of safety, but it is a beginning. The legal proceedings began 90 days after the disclosure. Not criminal proceedings, not yet. Civil accountability hearings, jurisdiction international. Observers from 60 nations watched closely. The Foundation's attorneys appeared, for the first time ever. The attorney's response was not "no one." It was not "I cannot say." The first question from the bench, simple. Who authorized this? A heavy silence. A name that caused 3 judges to pause simultaneously. A name connected to 4 governments, 2 international bodies, and a death in 2019. The named individual had not been seen publicly in 4 years. They were hidden away in an isolated estate. They held 2 passports, neither in their given name. Within 18 hours of the tribunal naming them, they were gone. All accounts, liquidated, all properties, transferred, all traces, gone. They had vanished into the clouds. The individual remains at large. Not because the system failed to find them, because the system they built, the satellite system, still works. And they still have access. The new monitoring body found something in their first week, a node that wasn't on the architecture Dr. Voss disclosed, a node that wasn't on anyone's map. And they are transmitting right now, a secret frequency, active in the dark. To reach the satellites requires a crewed mission to remove or disable foreign hardware in orbit. No legal framework exists for this. The working group had 30 days to write one. 3 nations claimed the satellites were theirs. They couldn't prove it. 3 other nations wanted them destroyed immediately. Others said, wait. Every voice in that room was right. None of them was sufficient, tension rising. The law had not caught up to the architecture. While lawyers debated, engineers prepared, a joint mission for the history books. A joint mission, 6 astronauts, 4 nations. Their objective, physical inspection of the unregistered satellites. Preparation underway for an international mission. The world stands united at the pad. The crew reached orbit in 9 hours and 22 minutes. They were 4 kilometers from the first unregistered satellite within 48 hours. What they saw through the window was not what anyone expected. A monumental shift. What they saw changed the mission, immediately. Into the deep unknown they went. The satellite bore 2 markings. One was an aerospace contractor code last used in 1993. The other was a symbol that appeared in one place in the documentation, hidden. On the page marked, Layer 8, do not open, the truth finally exposed. She had sealed that page herself. In 1994, on her last day at DARPA, she didn't know what was in Layer 8, but she was about to find out. She knew only that she had been told, this layer is not yours. They showed her. After 30 years, they finally showed her what Layer 8 was. She read for 20 minutes without speaking. When she finally spoke, she asked only one question. They showed her what Layer 8 was. She asked, is it still protecting anyone? The officials exchanged a look. One of them said, we believe so. She said, then I have one more proposal. She said, then I have one more proposal. The framework preserved Layer 8's protective function, under international oversight, with full auditing rights. Still operational, still resilient, still in some ways unhackable, but no longer invisible, no longer unaccountable. the system still orbits. It still protects communications. It still processes 4.3 trillion data packets every hour. The system still orbits. It still protects. But now, someone is watching it watch us, a silent guardian in the stars. The sky was never empty. The grid was never neutral. Our world connected. Power has always lived above us, in frequencies we can't feel, satellites we can't see. The only question that has ever mattered is, who is accountable for it, for all time? The answer now is everyone. That is not a conclusion. That is a beginning for all of us.